Social and political commentary from a Christian male perspective.
And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. You saw the thumbnail, you saw the title, you know what we're about to do. We're going to talk about Keisha Lance Bottoms, the former mayor of Atlanta. She went and worked for the Biden administration. Now she's running for governor of Georgia. Now, the thing that's interesting and a lot of people have buzz about is she's going to be the first Black female governor in the United States if she were to win the governorship here in Georgia. But I'm finding it a little bit perplexing because I did not hear this same kind of rhetoric when Stacey Abrams, another Black female, ran for governor previously against Governor Kemp as well. Why did they not talk about that? So I'm just wondering. But I also want to talk today. We're gonna look at a podcast here in Atlanta on this topic, and I just want to talk about very quickly about this race to be the first, this race to have first. And we've seen it all this year. This year has been pretty telling that just because somebody is the first at something doesn't mean they're the best. We saw Tiffany Henyard. She was, of course, the first, the youngest and the first female mayor of Dalton and supervisor of Thornton Township. Didn't go well. Karen Bass didn't go well. Marilyn Mosley didn't go well. And countless others. They might not have been first, but they've been propped up because of externals, have been propped up because of immutable characteristics, not because of the quality of their work. And we're going to look at this, and I just want to see what y'all think. So let me know in the comments below if I'm being a little bit too harsh. We're going to bring in Atlanta News First. I know I love Atlanta News First. Let's get them up in here. Let's talk about it. Let's go.
Georgia's 2026 wide open governor's race took on a new dimension this past week. This is Political Update here on Atlanta News First and AtlantaNewsFirst.com. I'm Tim Darnell, joined as always by my friend and colleague Rick Fulval. Rick, we are talking about former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, who after weeks after she originally hinted at a potential Georgia gubernatorial run, she made it official this past week. Your thoughts? We were kind of expecting it. She, as I mentioned at the top, she hinted at this on social media some weeks ago, made it official last week. Your input and your observations, please.
Well, you're right. Not really surprising. It's sort of one of the worst kept secrets in Georgia politics, I guess, over the last couple of months, was that the former mayor was considering and laying the groundwork for a potential run for the governor's office. And if she were to win the Democratic nomination and then go on to win the governor's seat, she would become the first Democrat to lead the state of Georgia since 2003. She would become the first Black governor of the state of Georgia as well. So there is some history here to her run and her potential successes if she were to go on to win. I think that she is without a doubt probably the highest profile Democrat to announce a bid for the governor's seat. Jason Estevez, of course, is also someone who's running, and he has a very good resume as well for Democrats to consider in a primary. But I have to say, and I think most people would agree, that Mayor Bottoms is the higher profile, the better known of the two, at least here in Metro Atlanta. It remains to be seen how much, that the fact that she was a former mayor here, how much that would mean for her outside of the metro area. Obviously, the governor's race is a statewide race, so she would have to attract first Democratic voters in other parts of the state, in the southern parts of the state especially, and then go on and win the Democratic nomination before she could even have thoughts of going on and winning the governor's race. But
so one of the things here in Georgia's not as bad as like Illinois, where like Chicago, lots of people in Illinois despise Chicago. And there's other major cities like that where this big, huge metroplex overshadows the rest of the state. Georgia's not really that bad. So, but Atlanta does pretty much sway the election process. So when we're looking at Georgia, though, yeah, Keisha Lance Bottoms needs to win all of, from the north to south, but really it's Atlanta that's going to make a big difference. And so we saw that in the presidential race. So I do think that it's going to be interesting because I say that because we here in Georgia don't despise Atlanta like other big cities are despised by their suburbs and ancillary cities in their state. We don't really despise Atlanta. So people might look favorably on Atlanta and former mayorship of Atlanta. For the most part, I could say that Atlanta's been run pretty well, decently, if you will. I believe it could be run better, but it's not the worst it's not a hellscape, right? It's not the worst thing we've ever seen. However, it could be run better. That's all I'm saying. So I think this is going to put her in an interesting position, but we'll see what happens. Let's keep this going. Let's go.
But again, she's in the race, and I think that it'll be very interesting to see how she handles things here, especially when it comes to her mayoral history here. She served one term and then surprised a lot of people, as you know, Tim, by deciding not to run for a second term. She then took a job inside the Biden administration. She was initially considered one of the contenders for a possible running mate for then Vice President Biden when he was running for the presidency. Of course, he went on and chose Kamala Harris, but she did get a boost to her name recognition nationally because she was mentioned as someone on the short list for that. But again, questions as to why she didn't run for a second term, and now questions about her involvement and exposure to President Biden in light of the fact that there are lots of questions now about his not only his physical health with the latest cancer diagnosis. Of course, she wouldn't really have had any insight into that since this happened long after she left the Biden administration. But I think that there will be questions asked to her as far as what she witnessed in terms of someone who worked closely with the president, the former president now, as far as his cognitive abilities in decline. And this is in light of a new book that has just come out that's generating a lot of buzz, saying that there were a lot of Democrats who were in fact aware of Mr. Biden's sort of cognitive decline during his time in the White House and leading up to his announcement that he.
Okay, I might be the odd man out. This might be a unpopular opinion, but instead of Biden is right, Biden is radioactive. Sure, the Biden administration is radioactive. Kamala Harris got you. Democrats got you. You don't have to try to hook Keisha Lance Bottoms to, did you know that he was in cognitive decline? You don't have to do that. We all knew it. And it's a truth. They lied. I don't remember at all Keisha Lance Bottoms saying that he was in good shape, unlike Kamala. I don't remember Keisha Lance Bottoms running duck and cover from, unlike Joy Reid and countless others. So I don't think we really need to do that. What we do need to do, however, is just hold her to her record. Hold her to her record. Sometimes these ancillary side quests arguments really detract from taking from the main issue. You're a Democrat. What are you about to do with our government? And really hold her feet to the fire. Who cares what she knew about Biden? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Most of us on this side were saying that Biden was bad shape. We were saying that Biden was weekends at Bernie's and all that kind of stuff like that. We knew it. So this dragging her through it for what? We already knew this. What I need to know is, let me see what your fiscal plan is. We have so many traffic issues in the metro Atlanta area. What's your solution? Let's go ahead and talk about how you're going to continue to build a good relationship with Savannah. Like, let's hear those things. Like, hold her feet to that fire. Don't worry about Biden. That's like asking you about your last job and holding your feet. I'm sorry, and holding over whether or not you get a new job based upon your questions about the last job. That has nothing to do with the other one. That's dumb. So I don't think we should spend any time on that at
Going to
all.
be running for a second term.
And you're referring to the book that came out this past week. taken the political world by storm. It's really all a lot of national commentators and outlets are talking about.
But
And
we
we're
already knew
talking
this
about,
stuff,
of
though.
course, original sin, President Biden's decline, its cover up, and his disastrous choice to run again. This is by CNN journalist Jake Tapper and also Alex Thompson, who is a White House political correspondent for Axios. It's kind of interesting. This book came out this just past week. I have not had a chance to read it. I know you haven't either. I have ordered it and can't wait to delve into the details. But Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson are really on the receiving end of a lot of criticism for why this topic is only coming out now and why perhaps media outlets didn't cover some of the president's gaffes and things of that nature more during his administration. But really, all of this came to a head on June 27th, 2024, here in Atlanta,
That's right.
when
They-
then President Biden and Donald Trump debated here in Atlanta. I was covering that debate. You were too. You were watching. I'm sure we all saw what happened. Take us back to your memories of your reaction during the June 27th, 2024 CNN debate here in Atlanta.
Well, my reaction, I think, was probably like most people's, which was, oh boy, what is going on here? President Biden was asked seemingly very straightforward questions about, topics pertaining to his time in office and his announced candidacy for a second term, and he really was just unable to really string ideas and answers together in a way that made any sense at all. I remember at one point there was a shot, the camera showed both former President Trump.
This guy is trying to be too political. This guy is trying to be entirely too coy with the topic. Biden was incoherent. Just say that. He was incoherent. He was showing very serious mental strain and drain. There you go. You don't have to, all these words. In the multitude of words, there's sin. Just go ahead and just say the truth. The dude was demonstrating high levels of mental strain and stress. That's it.
Now President Trump and President Biden, now former President Biden. And while President Biden was struggling to answer one of these questions posed to him by Jake Tapper, who was the moderator, co-moderator of that debate and the co-author of the book that we're talking about that just came out, and President Trump turned and looked at his opponent, and I think he too was stunned. It was like, whoa, what's going on here? And then President Trump said, I don't really know what he just said. I don't think he knows what he just said. And that really encapsulated a lot of the feelings that I think a lot of viewers were having, whether you were in favor of President Biden or in favor of then former President Trump. This is the man who is in the White House right now, and he is struggling mightily to answer, pretty straightforward, simple questions. And so that, I think, was it certainly was the beginning of the end of his reelection campaign. And it seemed to me at the time,
I really wanted to say this. Most people, right-leaning, conservative, Republicans, we've been saying this from the word go. I know there's videos of me saying I didn't think Biden was going to make it 18 months into his presidency. I was a little surprised, but I didn't think he was going to make it 18 months into his presidency. I think the reason is they realized how terrible of a vice president Kamala was, and they were like kind of stuck. So that being the case, that's the only reason I believe he was even propped up. If he had a better vice president, I don't think Joe Biden would have made it his whole term. I'm just saying. But anyway, no, we already knew this, though. We had been saying this from the word go, from the first ballot being cast. We said that Joe Biden wasn't. You all were not willing to admit the obvious. You all were not willing to say the quiet part out loud. This man is not here. This man is too old. I've said it before. We got to stop running these old candidates. We got to. Not saying that they don't have value, not trying to be an ageist or anything like that, but somebody that's 2 times as old as the minimum age to be president. Come on now. You mean to tell me you don't have any 50-year-olds on your team? You don't have any 45, 55-year-olds on your team that you can run? You got to run a 78-year-old man. You have to run a 75-year-old man. Really? Okay. Then y'all just going to keep losing. Okay. No, but we've been saying this, Rick Falbum. You all just didn't listen to us. Now all of a sudden you want to be like, oh, we've been surprised and we've been taken aback. No, you haven't. You just didn't want to admit what we were seeing, what we all were seeing, the observable reality that Joe Biden was not there. That's what you didn't want to admit. And that's your fault.
That it was not a matter of if, but when he was going to announce that he was going to step aside. And of course, that ended up coming, and not right away, but it ended up coming some weeks after the debate here in Atlanta, when he stepped aside, and then Kamala Harris, the vice president, sort of assumed the role of the nominee without really any kind of a battle amongst other Democrats who might have also been considering a run. She was sort of anointed the new nominee with President Biden's support at the time. And of course, we all know how that worked out for the Democrats.
Well, regardless of anyone's.
And we do. And we did. We saw it. And it was a train wreck. It was a disaster. Absolutely. There's so many problems with that. When you talk about the rule of law, you talk about the right to the people's voice and so on and so forth, and you look at how they did that, don't miss me with all that stuff. Miss me with it all.
Political affiliations, we are all sending our best wishes and hopes to former President Biden, who was announced this week or very recently that he is suffering from a fairly aggressive form of prostate cancer. And we're all, as I said, regardless of political affiliations or beliefs, sending best wishes to the former president. Let's circle back to Keisha Lance Bottoms. She was a one-term Atlanta mayor, the first one-term Atlanta mayor to serve only one term. Apologies for the redundancies. But since Sam Massell in 1972, who was running for re-election against Vice Mayor Maynard Jackson, Maynard Jackson would go on to become Atlanta's first African-American mayor, I should say, defeating Sam Massell very handily in 1972. Maynard Jackson would go on to serve 2 consecutive terms and then a third uninterrupted term after 2 terms from Ambassador Andrew Young. Maynard Jackson and Andrew Young obviously played a huge role in securing the 1996 Olympic Games to the city of Atlanta. Keisha Lance Bottoms takes over from her predecessor, Kasim Reed, in the middle of a federal investigation into alleged wrongdoings during Mayor Reed's office. She takes over. She is the leader of the city during the COVID-19 pandemic, oversaw a Super Bowl here in Atlanta, but also had some controversies during her tenure as mayor. Only a few weeks after George Floyd died in Minneapolis police custody, we had the police-related shooting and death of Rayshard Brooks in South Atlanta, led to a resignation from Atlanta Police Chief Erica Shields. And then we all know that the very controversial Atlanta Public Safety Training Center was begun under Mayor Bottoms' watch. A lot of controversies during her tenure. What are some of the issues she has to overcome, specifically as regards to her record as a one-term Atlanta mayor?
Well, I think that the question as to why she didn't run for a second term is one that she's going to be asked a lot. And she's already been asked, and she sort of tried to brush it off and say that she does not think that that's going to be a problem for her. But I'm not so sure that that's the case. I think that a lot of Democrats are going to be curious as to why she decided not to run for re-election. Before they are willing to give her their vote in a Democratic primary. I think that Democratic voters voters, primary voters, would want to know that this would be someone who would be willing to step up and serve 2 terms if possible. And so she's going to have to answer that question a little bit more forcefully and I think more convincingly than she has. Again, it's early going here for the Bottoms campaign, at least officially speaking. So she has some time to work on that with her communication strategists. But I think that that's going to be a big issue. I think that that the unrest, the civil unrest that played out here in the streets of Atlanta back in the summer of 2020, something that few people who lived through it will ever forget. It was a harrowing time here in Atlanta for a number of days and nights, and she was in charge. While all of that was happening, for better or worse. If you're in charge, you take the credit when good things happen, and you take the blame when things do not go well. And I think that a lot of people will look back on that period of time and have questions as to whether she could have been more effective and done a better job, perhaps, of trying to tamp down the upset and the unrest that really riled the city and caused so much damage and destruction here to local businesses and institutions. So I think that those probably are the 2 main things. Of course, there was also the cyber attack that took place while she was mayor. And I think that that is something that obviously a lot of people are concerned about in this day and age, when we seem to have a lot of these types of attacks happening on a more frequent basis. What would her plan be going forward if that were to happen again while she was in the governor's mansion? But I think the Biden question is really not something that is unimportant here. What did you know and when did you know it? And if people really read this Jake Tapper book and begin to get behind the idea that there was some type of conspiracy among top Democrats to hide the fact that President Biden was in such a state of decline, as someone who worked in the Biden administration, questionable how senior a role she played, but still she was a part of the administration. She was appointed to a role by the president. She's going to have to answer that question. When you were with President Biden, when you were in his presence, did you not notice any kind of decline? Did you not notice that he was struggling at all? And that, I think, is going to be a question.
I think that would be such a wasted opportunity if they spend time grilling Keisha Lance Bottoms over her interaction with Joe Biden. I just don't think that's that's a waste of time. What did you expect her to do? Did you really expect her to break ranks with the Democrat machine that said that we're propping up this man to keep him going? Did you really expect her to break ranks with them and do something different? What's the purpose of asking the question then? Okay, fine. She stuck with her. She did what the party was doing. Like, but y'all gonna still vote for Raphael Warnock. You're gonna still vote for John Ossoff. You're gonna still vote for any other Democrat. You can do this exact same thing to anybody. If you walked in DC, did you know Joe Biden was crazy? Then we can't vote for you. Oh, then there you go. And I want y'all to hold that same level of smoke, though. I want y'all to hold that same level of smoke and say, hey, you were in the Biden White House. We can't vote for you. Okay, be consistent. Do that all the way to the end.
And that she'll also have to answer in a convincing and forceful way in order to persuade Democratic primary voters here in the state that she is ready for a run for statewide office. So first she has to convince Democrats, and then if she were to make it through and win the nomination, she would then have to go on and convince voters across the state and across party lines that she was someone suitable for the governor's office. And I think that is right now a big question.
Well, her candidacy is already an historic one. To my knowledge, she is the first former Atlanta mayor ever to seek Georgia's governorship. If elected, she would accomplish something that former Democratic state lawmaker Stacey Abrams tried and was unsuccessful in doing in the last two Georgia gubernatorial elections, becoming the first African American female chief executive of a state in U.S. history. But as you said, she has to make it through the primary. We have one other announced Democratic gubernatorial contender, Metro Atlanta State Senator Jason Estevez, hearing some rumors that former DeKalb CEO and former chairman of the DeKalb County Board of Education, Michael Thurmond, might be running. That's two confirmed Democrats, a potential third. Jason Carter, we know, has ruled out a gubernatorial run at this time because of family health concerns, as has U.S. Congresswoman Lucy McBath. This is a Democratic Party that seemingly is unable to really field a statewide candidate for a top office outside of the Metro Atlanta region. What are your thoughts as far as how Georgia voters in other parts of the state are going to continue to react to a party that may perhaps be seen as being centrally controlled from the city of Atlanta?
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, I mean, it's certainly no surprise when you look at really any state, and certainly any swing state. The major metropolitan areas are where you're going to see the Democratic base. Most Democratic voters are going to be in those areas, and I'm thinking about Pennsylvania, for example, where Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are the two main cities in that state. And if a Democrat can't win in those cities and win by large margins, he or she has no chance of winning statewide. And I think that the same could be said here in Georgia when you take a look at some of the major population areas, of course, here in Metro Atlanta, Savannah, of course, as well, and a few other pockets of the state where there are Democratic votes out there. I think that what former Mayor Bottoms is banking on is that popularity for President Trump is going to drop, that as some of these Trump policies are enacted, the Trump budget that looks like it's getting set to be passed, at least in the House of Representatives, as his agenda is playing out, that his popularity is going to drop, that there's going to be an increased level of people who want to see change. And we are coming up on, this is all it's all happening during a midterm election cycle when the party that's out of power typically does well in a.
All right. So let me real quick, just my junior league political strategy. Stop focusing on Washington, D.C. Stop it. Focus on what's going on here. Don't bet on Trump's popularity waning. We voted for this. We want this type of president and this type of leadership. So don't bet like, I hope they stumble. I hope they fall. No, root for and plan for you to be successful and train for you to be a successful candidate. If you're busy spending your time wondering about what Trump is going to do and how to capitalize on a mistake that Trump makes, you're not going to be working on your own strengths or weaknesses that you need to work on. Just my little 2 cents. It's a fool's errand.
Midterm elections. So historically speaking, that is. So we'll see. I think that it'll be very interesting. This is a sort of a gamble on the part of Keisha Lance Bottoms and Jason Estevez and anyone else who decides to get into the race as a Democrat to sort of be the anti-Trump candidate, someone who is going to say, look, you don't look at what the Trump policies are doing. Look at how it's impacting the economy. Look at how it's impacting jobs, and how it's impacting government services that so many people rely on that are now being cut as a result of the Trump agenda. And I think that is going to be her main argument here, is that she would fight against those types of policies on behalf of Georgians and try to get the state back on track. Now, whether that's enough.
Okay, I got to stop there. So there's 3 problems in this statement right here. I don't know if Keisha Lance Bottoms is going to run on this. I'm going to run against Trump. Well, what are you running for, though? But what are you actually for. Sure, you're against what he's doing. That's why I said take your eyes off of DC. Focus on here in the Peach State. If that's her plan, it's going to be problematic. It's going to be a mess. But also the idea of getting Georgia back on track. What do you mean? Like, give me where are we not on track? Georgia's economy is doing fine. Traffic is bad. Maybe that's what he means. But like, tell me what you mean by get Georgia back on track. Because there's a lot of people that be like, yo, we're doing pretty well. What are you talking about? So if you come in here with this woe is me, you're doing bad, you're oppressed type of narrative, you're gonna lose handily. Handily. Let's just go. We're done.
To win statewide, I think that remains to be seen, but I think that that's the tack that she's going to take. And I think it's probably the best tact at this point, given that national polling numbers for President Trump are down and could go lower depending on what happens with the economy.
Well, with 2026 right around the corner, we have the potential here in Georgia to have all of the top statewide offices, Georgia governor, lieutenant governor, perhaps, secretary of state, perhaps, attorney general, definite, as well as a tough reelection battle ahead for U.S. Senator John Ossoff. All elections that we're going to continue to follow quite diligently here on Atlanta News First and AtlantaNewsFirst.com. This has been Political Update for the week of May 23rd, 2025. I'm Tim Darnell for Rick Fulvound. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. Remembering that you can.
I like that. So thank y'all for that. That was good. Hopefully you learned something from there. And let me know what you think. Do you think Keisha Lance Bottoms has a chance? If you live here in Georgia, shout out to all my Peach State residents. Would you vote for Keisha Lance Bottoms, or do you need to see some other candidates? Why is it that you feel that the Democrats are the first ones out the gate with their possible 3 candidates? Why the Republicans not done anything? Just a thought. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I appreciate you liking the video as well as subscribing and helping us hit our goal of 50,000 subscribers. Look forward to rocking with you all real soon. And until then, grace and peace.